My name's Andy Graham and I'm the Wonderware Product Manager. If you attended our recent Digitalised Roadshow, then you will have seen this content, but I'm just obviously conscious that there's more people than attended our roadshow, so it's important to get this across. So firstly, I'd just like to start by saying really it's about changing the way that you think about what the cloud actually is and what it means to you. Everybody's in a different place in their journey, and it isn't a place, it isn't a thing. It's actually a strategy. It's a strategy that you can adopt. It's a strategy you can think about what you want to do in the next few years, in the next 5, 10 years, long term. But it is a lot more about than just storing data. I think we fall into the trap of just saying, well, we just store data in the cloud. That isn't the case now. It's really clear from things like us using Office 365. Many of our IT systems are moving to the cloud, and there's a lot better increasing competitiveness that you can get from doing that. And it's about really being an enabler for better things, and we use it in our day-to-day lives. I've given an example quite a few times of now how we do all of our bank transfers electronically, or most of them. We no longer go to cash machines to pull money out of a till, a hole in the wall. We sit next to the person, we enter the details, and we send the money that way instead. So many people are using it these days, and there's lots of good reasons for it, and there's a few benefits and a bit about security here. In terms of cost, we talked in the past, or we have done a lot about the difference between a capital expense versus an OPEX expense. So yes, there is elements of that, but there's a lot that goes around that OPEX cost. So we're not just saying we're taking a perpetual license and we're moving it to a yearly cost. We're offering something different, and we expect something different from it. If you look at costs in terms of housing some of this internally, there'd be lots of infrastructure costs. So you'd have to think about the hardware you're putting it on, all the servers that you're purchasing, the round-the-clock electricity for power and cooling, the IT experts for managing that infrastructure. Lots of cost in terms of an on-premise solution adds up quickly. And more often than not, you can remove 90% of those infrastructure costs when you move to a cloud-based platform. If we look at things like productivity, from a spec-in perspective, if you had to put some hardware in for an on-premise solution, you'd have to think quite long and hard about how I future-proof that. So how do I ensure that the hardware I'm putting in isn't going to become obsolete in the next 3 years and I'm going to have to replace it, and then there's the whole rigmarole of having to change it all out. With a cloud-based solution, it removes the need for being able to or needing to spec things to that degree. We have something that they call like elasticity. If you require more resources from the machine that you're running the system on, it will automatically grant those to you in the back end without you even seeing that. What we're not saying here is, from a performance perspective, there's still going to be things like latencies that you have to think about. So when we come on to talking a bit about how much of our information will move to the cloud, this is a reason why we've always started with data. There's an awful lot we can do with data, and hopefully this presentation will explain that along the way. But from a real-time perspective, you perhaps wouldn't move your control to the cloud at this point in time. There's a speed, there's a latency issue, there's safety issues, there's lots of things that go around that, and I certainly can't see it for the mid to even to the long term at the moment. But there is a lot of competitiveness that we can get out of doing it in this way. If we look at then a bit about security, so Wonderware were actually the first to in this industry. In this space to achieve the Security Development Lifecycle Assurance certification, and you can see that on the right-hand side there. They have dedicated industrial control systems, incident response teams, essentially, looking at the system at a in a more proactive route to make sure that we stay up and running. And then from a security perspective, they do things like internal audits by specific auditors for that regard. And when we look at things like the cloud platform itself, this, and certainly Wonderware, they do this all on Microsoft Azure. In the past, we've always talked about them being very closely aligned with Microsoft. It makes sense that they move to the Azure platform. And if you look at their compliance of coverage in the industry, it is probably one of the most deepest and most comprehensive that we see there. And there's a load of standards and things that you can see on the screen. If you were trying to implement something like this in an on-premise solution, it would take a whole team of people constantly updating things to be able to achieve this. They do a lot for you as part of that platform. If we look a little bit about the implementation approach, and I've mentioned a little bit already about how you have like your on-premise real-time solutions, and we still see those sticking certainly for a long time. We just need that edge control, that ability to be able to do more at that bottom layer, and then there's the control element. But what we can start to see the shift in is this split between the two. So yes, you can see I've not included any specific names of software in this stack, but if you look on the left-hand side for the on-premise stack, that first one might be your SCADA implementation. Then the next one might be perhaps some information management. It might be some MES. There might be something, yes, we still need quite a lot of local control, but actually we can start to move some of the cloud elements of that function to the cloud. And then when we get down to the bottom layer, if we want to start to share lots of information, lots of data, that's really where it comes into its own. And like I say, there's lots of different ways we can do that. The key here is that it's staged, so it should be a piecemeal approach with things like flexible added services. So you should be able to differentiate, if I have this requirement, what's the added service that I can provide by moving to a cloud-based solution. And it's just about understanding what your requirements are and then being able to show how that mix of the technologies can fit together neatly. And then there's an awful lot around the technology platform. And this is really the key to success, and it's how these systems integrate together. They should be as seamless as possible to remove things like lots of complex engineering, lots of complex scripting, which reduces or it creates technical debt in the solution. What we're talking about here is a commercial off-the-shelf solution or solutions that allow us to get more out of our data. I just wanted to take you back a little bit to show you a bit about the history, just to show you that this isn't new. It's not new to Wonderware. They have actually been running cloud-hosted solutions since 2010 in a product called SmartGlance, which was essentially just KPIs. It was value stored from your plant up into a mobile platform. It served its purpose. It was very early to market. It was, one of the first that we saw. So you can understand that actually there was a bit of a gap then until 2013, where they put the first managed historian in the cloud. This was essentially the same look and feel you'd get from an on-premise solution. You're just doing it in the cloud, and then you can send your data up there, and then you can manipulate it how you like. But that followed very quickly by something called Wonderware Online, which you may or may not be aware of. And this is a more tenanted type solution. So it's a native cloud application. So the difference here is that we're no longer configuring our historian backend in the cloud as we were in 2013. We're now getting a user-friendly front end that allows us to enter our details into things like forms, and it will provision the right space in the background. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. You just what you see is what you get, kind of thing on the front end. They've obviously done lots of expansion over this, and part of the beauty of working in the cloud is that you can see new functions come to the forefront quarter by quarter. We're starting to see them. So they introduced a clever search capability, which allowed you to not have to worry so much about the specific tag name you're typing in to retrieve the data. You can type in anything to do with it, engineering units, description. It will bring back results for you. They introduced a news feed, they called it, and this is unsupervised machine learning. So this is simple anomaly detection, but what it'll do for you is look back over the last 2 weeks worth of data, and if it sees anomalies in that, so things are trending high or low, it will let you know that that's happening, so you can go and have a look at it in more detail. And you don't have to touch that for it to provide that information for you. They focus very much on the hybrid approach, and this goes back to that implementation approach that I mentioned in the last slide. And this is really about being able to get the right mix of products on-premise and the cloud, and the seamless way to integrate the two between them. And there's lots of ways that we can do that. They then, in 2017, introduced OEE, so obviously overall equipment effectiveness, and I'll explain more a little bit about that later on. But this is I suppose it's more of a cut-down MES solution, something that actually you want to get on that ladder. You perhaps don't want a full MES solution because you don't need to understand the quality of the products. You don't need work order management. You just want to understand the utilization and the downtime associated with your assets, because the more I can stay up, the more product I'll produce, and that'll obviously improve my bottom line. And then what we're expecting soon is graphics. So we're expecting to be able to see and use graphics in there, and I've got a video to show you that shortly. Maps already exist, so you can put your assets on a map and you can see exactly where they live. So if you've got a very distributed type solution, you can very easily get to the information quickly. Everybody understands a map, so it's quite a nice way of navigating around it. So if we then get into some of the detail of it, and there's obviously lots and lots of devices we can connect to at the bottom end. Lots of things that have been around for a while. There's lots of new ones coming on the scene, very low-cost sensors, which are actually really important, especially when you're looking to get more information out of your system, especially when you're looking at things like OEE. Sensors could be really important. Predictive maintenance is another one. I'm not going to labour the point too much about devices. What's important is that your provider, and certainly from a Wonderware standpoint, you're agnostic. So you can connect to any device at any level, and Wonderware are always expanding that. So they connect to these low-cost sensors. They connect to even these low-powered battery-type sensors through MQTT, if you've ever heard of that, Message Queue Telemetry Transfer. So you can get data from anywhere in the world, even things with very low bandwidth type communications. We then have the edge layer, this that I mentioned very briefly earlier. So these are the applications in the middle there that, from an on-premise perspective, you might have to do some manipulation, because the data coming directly from your devices don't provide you with that richness that you need to be able to do what you need to do from a client perspective at the cloud layer. So that edge control, that edge device will allow you to do any manipulation that you need to, and then send up the relevant information to your cloud infrastructure. And again, there's lots of different flavors in here, things from very low cost HMIs. There's HMIs that will exist out there already, and we do our own in InTouch Edge HMI, and we obviously move up into things like full-blown InTouch, system platform. We can do it via CSV if needs to. We can do it straight from the PLC if your PLC is clever enough to manipulate the data prior to sending up there. And then once we have that, it's about then getting that data up there. And again, there's lots of easy ways we can do that. A very lightweight industrial secure publisher service is available that comes with the cloud solution that allows us to get from those edge devices up to the cloud infrastructure. And some of the important things to note around this kind of thing is that the cloud installation is installed based on where you log on to the website. So if you are in the EU and you need to stick to strict data integrity laws around the EU, then they understand that, and your installation will be in Dublin in Ireland and Amsterdam for disaster resilience, so that you've got that highly available solution, but the important part is that the data is sitting where you want it to sit. We're not sitting out in the States. Obviously, if you want to connect to the States one, then you can do, and so on and so forth. Then if we just expand this cloud a little bit, so I'm going to start with the analysis and analytics. This was the first thing that they introduced to this online solution, and this was about presenting your data in a very simple way. So what it allowed you to do and what it provided was secure access to lots of locations, hundreds, thousands if you want to. They introduced threshold detection, so if you hit a certain value, then you can get a push notification to mobile devices. You can now see it in the web client as well. It's very intuitive. So there's a great analogy around Facebook. If loads of people around the world use Facebook, there's no training manual to use it. This is exactly the same. So you log into the website, and it's very intuitive and easy to use to get the information out of it that you need. And I mentioned already there's that news feed and that anomaly detection. But what are the main benefits here? So we're really looking at analysis and diagnostics. Perhaps we're looking at some team collaboration and sharing between different sites, different assets, so we can compare the differences between them. And the idea behind this is, I've put a who is it designed for. Probably not your operations layer at the bottom end, so not the engineers on site using it, but perhaps it's the line managers that manage those. Certainly continuous improvement would be a big one, and then area managers to go a bit further afield. I've got a short video next, and this just gives you a example of what the interface looks like. So this is currently showing a dashboard, and you can see the map that exists there. I'm going to go into that and have a look at it in a little bit more detail. We can get down to the asset and the values that are associated with it. You can see around the interface underneath we've got the time frame. Again, it's this intuitive interface. On the left-hand side, we've got the search results, so the tags that we're bringing back into this. Then on the right here, you can see this pull-up menu that allows us to change the chart type that we're using. In this case, we've used a line chart instead, so we're manipulating the data. And again, nothing clever is required to do this. It is out of the box. You can see some zoning on there as well. So they've allowed very recently actually for configured limits. So these are like our operating ranges. If I want to make sure that I'm always inside of those, and if I go outside of it, I want to send a push notification, then I can do. And we can see there just adding a new tag. And again, you can see we only typed a small part of that tag name or that description, and it brings it into the system. And then it's just showing you a bit about how you can manipulate that data to show differences. Like you can do it here, we're doing averages, but you can do minimum, maximum, the last values, and then we're obviously changing the time frame there, and you can do it for different time frames too. There's a load of detail, and this is where we actually set the push notification up. You can see on screen. That allows us to set that threshold of that data. This is just a very quick view to show you what the mobile application looks like. So what we're not doing is taking the same web look and feel and scrunching it down into a mobile device. Obviously, if you're using an iPad, you'd be fine with the web client. This is a native mobile app, so you download it from the app stores, and it produces the same information, but in a much easier view. For that smaller viewing, and we can even get notifications out to wearable devices. You can see there, through things like watches, so you can get this information wherever you are in the world. We're then going to move on to a bit about this DOE that I mentioned earlier, so the performance management, and you can see a few KPIs that the kind of thing that it will produce for you. And the idea behind this is that we can minimize downtime and increase efficiency. Two of the biggest KPIs that we get as an organisation is user requirements from our end user base. So what does this provide? It allows for automatic or manual detection of downtime events. So what that means is if you have downtime events recorded in your PLC, you'll be able to see what those downtime events were. You'll still need some user interaction probably to be able to enter things like downtime reasons, unless you have that edge layer to be able to do that manipulation there before you send it up. A good example of the edge control stuff is if the PLC just has discrete values but doesn't have a downtime trigger, if you like. You could do that downtime trigger in your edge control and then send that value up to understand it. And the idea is we can get then the equipment utilization and OEE KPIs out of it. So we can certainly, in this case, compare different pieces of equipment. You can gain lots of insights into your downtime, so you can do continuous improvement. So really, it's designed for very similar, if not the same, OT roles in the organisation. Certainly, continuous improvement is a big one when we're looking at this kind of thing. And then I've just got a screenshot. There's no video here, just showing you an example of what a dashboard looks like. And again, it builds up that picture itself. You enter some configuration items in the background to tell it where it's getting its data from the information you're storing. It records all those downtime events for you, and then the user, the operator, can enter the reason behind why that occurred. And then it starts to bring up some clever information like what were the top 5 downtime reasons by count. And the more you can knock off the top of the list there, you're very quickly going to improve your efficiency, especially if you've got some really problem areas where you've got lots of duration for those downtime occurrences, or if there's a high number of them, of course. So you can manipulate this in slightly different ways. So what is this going to start to enable? And this isn't actually with us yet. This is something that is imminent. So we'll start to build up bigger dashboards. We can see graphics, which I'll talk to shortly. We've already mentioned the maps on there. The MES data is a natural next progression, so this will naturally come into our dashboard display. And that analytics, like the anomaly detection on the right-hand side there through the news feed. But what I have got next is just a short video showing you how the graphics are going to be implemented as the first instance of this. So you can see we've got the option to add a graphic here. We're going into to edit it, and to begin with, this will be done with static graphics. So it's things that they are choosing or they're providing as part of the solution. In the future, there'll be a way to do that through the Architecture graphics that we create at our on-premise level. So it is, ultimately the same look and feel on-premise versus on cloud. And then from here, we can drag our historical values that are obviously here. They're updating. We can change the type of chart that we want to see, and they'll update in as near to real time as our data appears inside of our system. So no, it's not real-time values, but if the latency is quite low, you're seeing this very, very quickly. And you can see the difference in the types of tags we'll drag on. So obviously there's lots of analogs there, but here's a discrete to tell us that something's running or not running. And then once we've done that, we'll save it, go back to the dashboard, and we can actually see in the dashboard then that this is updating live values. Admittedly, it's very small here, but again, one of the recent additions to the solution is that you can now manipulate your dashboards and change the size of all the information that exists on there, so we can see it a bit larger. So yeah, that's imminent, and then you can see here the dashboard showing all the MES and KPI information too. So what's next? What else is possible? And we've actually done some of this with our customers already. The cloud is certainly an extensible solution. If it's in a cloud-based infrastructure, there is going to be ways that we can access it, and we have secure APIs that you can access our historian data from. So one of our customers needed more than analysis and analytics and performance management. They actually needed some condition monitoring, which was a bit more in-depth than anomaly detection and threshold detection. They needed more 3D type conditions, so things that said if a value has reached a certain threshold, but it's actually done it for over an hour period, that's when I want to see an alert. I don't want to see it when it hits that threshold. So it's a little bit more complex. So we went out to some of the Microsoft Azure services that are available. We used the secure API to pull the data out of the historian there, and then once it did the manipulation via one of the Azure services that we chose, it would then feed that data back in. So one of the key things here is that we had the same graphical user interface for the user. We were just essentially triggering a threshold so that we knew that we needed to go and look at something, but it was doing the clever stuff in the background behind the condition monitoring in that Azure service to produce that result. And obviously Microsoft Azure services are, they've got lots of them out there if you've ever had an experience of it. And this is a great way that you can build up some IP, because there's obviously we have a huge system integrator community, lots of skills out there that can allow our systems integrators to do some really clever stuff with this. And part of the beauty of doing something like this is that it then extends to a further reach of role within the business or even externally. So in this case, this was more data science type solution, and then you can provide the information to more people, and it can be more meaningful for more people, particularly people like your digital supply chain, which we're starting to see a lot more of. Certainly moving more digital. So, and lastly, what I would like to say is we have also worked with third parties, and in one particular case, we've worked with a predictive maintenance company that provides predictive maintenance based on your assets. So it provides asset health. So they are very much geared towards the assets that live at your on-premise solution. The data from those are being stored into our cloud-based solution. But actually they want to access that information through that secure API. We've set up a direct connection for them now, so it's like it's not engineering something new every single time. They have like a set way of connecting to it through your credentials. And then you can start to ask even more questions of that data. So yes, we've done things like analysis, we've done some MES performance information, but now we can start to look at things like, how is my machinery behaving right now? When will that machine fail? Or which machine should be prioritized for maintenance? In more cases than not, our customers have set maintenance routines where they go and have a look and clean something, or they might have a failure number of hours from the manufacturer that says, right, well, we need to replace this piece of equipment on the plant floor. That can actually be very costly without even knowing it. If we're replacing equipment that isn't seeing failures at that point, what is the actual life of that equipment? And am I maintaining it too quickly? If I can start to build up a bigger picture and introduce much more rigid maintenance routines, I can save a lot of money that way too. And this is something that's a very hot topic. It's something that's been discussed very widely in the last few years. And then what you can start to get is dashboards that look something like this. This is through the partner solution that we've paired with to deliver this. But it tells you when intervention is likely based on those machine conditions, based on things like these low-cost sensors that we're adding to the asset to be able to get more information out of our solution. So we can increase our remaining useful life and do much more condition monitoring from that as well. Lastly then, I do have a bit of roadmap information for what's happening with the Wonderware Cloud. So from a graphical display perspective, you're already seeing a little bit about how the graphics are going to come into the system. They're looking at edge device management in a much more integrated way. So yes, we can do the edge control and do that engineering at the edge layer, the on-premise solution. But actually, it'd be much easier if we could just install our edge device, our InSuch Edge HMI, for example, at that local level, create the connection to the cloud so our cloud can see that device, and then create the configuration for that edge device in the cloud and push it down and not the other way around. So when you start to scale up, that becomes a lot easier for then you get contractors that can install the edge control device, and actually the engineering work is a case of templates and things in that cloud solution that can be pushed out to multiple devices. They're looking at changing the data so that it's more meaningful in terms of the assets, very similar to System Platform. If you've not seen System Platform before, it's very much a digital asset, or being able to digitally model your assets in a real-time solution. So it makes sense that they then can map that data in the cloud to that as well. And then there's obviously lots of other products in the portfolio. So things like workflows or business process management is a huge one, and it makes it forever extensible. So it's really important that we can start to bring some of those other solutions out there in a really intuitive and easy to use way. So you can see there's lots of different things we can do in here already. I've put a key on there to show you the different things I've talked about today. There is a website that you can go to, so it's online.wonderware.eu. I'll take you to the solution in Europe. There's a try it now button on there, but if you wanted to see some value very quickly, there is 45-day trials that you can sign up to and start to store your data up there very, very quickly. We can help with that if you'd like to some assistance in doing so, and then you can start to see some real value. It's a lot easier to be able to see where the value comes from when you can see your own data in that platform. So it's something that is growing. I still think there's a definite split between the real-time and the cloud-based solution, but you can hopefully see from this webinar that there's been a lot of investment and lots of changes that have happened over the last couple of years. So we're now going to just open up the lines and see if we have...
Line unmuted.
Yeah, it's okay.
Is there any questions on there? Sorry? Did somebody ask a question then? No. We have had a question in the chat. So somebody's asked how we can ensure that the outbound connection is secure. Believe it or not, it's a question that gets asked very, very regularly, and it's something that is obviously that security is a very huge topic, and we've got lots of networking experts in the building that can assist with being able to do things like audits, provide you with information as to how your infrastructure should look to be able to achieve that. There's also a really good website through Wonderware called trust.wonderware.com. If you go to there, it includes things like SLAs, but it tells you the security information that may be enough for you to be able to achieve what you need to. As an example from the utility that you can download to store the data up there, it only requires a single outbound port to be able to make that connection. And data is encrypted at motion and in rest, so we're not sending any static data. And then when it's in there, there's a chance that it's actually aggregated data in the cloud. You've already seen the depth of security they have in the Microsoft Azure platform, but if that was to be compromised for any reason, and people could retrieve data from there, how meaningful would that be without the context behind it? So if they're just seeing aggregated values from a temperature sensor, would there be any value in that to them? So there's lots of conversations that we have with customers around security, and if it's something that is of a concern to you, particularly when it comes to cloud, then by all means, please get in touch and we'll be happy to discuss that further. Is there any other questions? No? Okay, so lastly, I'd just like to tell you about a couple of the webinars we're going to have in the new year. You can register for them via our website as normal, or via the mailers that will come out to you. The first one is going to be around InTouch Web. So again, it might be something that you've heard of before, but we'll be promoting some new content in there about a web-based solution that provides orchestrographic views of your information. They've extended out a little bit further now as well, so that's quite exciting. And then I talked a little bit about it today, but our InTouch Edge HMI, and we're going to be presenting about in March. So really looking at that edge control and what that platform can provide for you, because it is much more than just a simple HMI solution, but it can obviously address and sit at the bottom of there, and it sits very nicely in the stack. So if you wanted to integrate that into your full SCADA solution, like into system platform as an example, it's a very, very simple task to do so. Then all that's left, I suppose, is just say thank you for attending, and if there's any questions, get in touch, and have a good Christmas and New Year. Thank you.